Hey everyone, it's Nightharo here, and today I got a guide for you for Veteran Dreadsail Reef, the last boss. Now, I know many of you probably saw my guide for the first boss in Dreadsail Reef, and this video guide is going to be very much the same. This is just kind of my first take at this, first pass. I know a lot of people are struggling. They were kind of progging on the first boss. Now a lot of people are progging on the last boss, and so I just want to get a quick guide out. I will come out with a more complete, more in-depth guides as time goes by, but I just want to take a quick first pass at it. So hopefully I could help get some people some clears and that you guys don't have to wait on me, because it takes a little bit to do those more in-depth, more comprehensive guides. If you are struggling with something in particular and I don't cover it today in this video, or if you just want to ask questions or whatever, you can go to the homepage on my YouTube channel and you'll see that I am scheduling, I'm running this about 3 times a week with different groups of different skills. So if you want to see different aspects, come ask questions, that kind of thing, please feel free. Some of those groups have more experience, some of them have less experience. So, take a look at the description and feel free to come drop in and ask questions as you'd like. Anyways, with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So first things first, so I do have a couple of add-ons here. Right now, I am using primarily Hodor Reflexes and then Q-Cell's Dreadsail Reef Helper. So those are the two main add-ons that I'm using. Q-Cell's Dreadsail Reef Helper is the main one that's showing all the mechanics, putting bubbles over people's head and doing a few other things. Again, I will do this guide though in such a way that you absolutely do not need these add-ons. And honestly, that's my preferred style of play. I don't like mechanics add-ons. Some of the quality of life ones are really great, but some of the mechanics one, I just don't like the text always popping up on my screen. I've learned to ignore it as time goes by, but just realize that you won't need any of these add-ons. I will explain this in such a way that it should be very clear without all those add-ons, hopefully. So if you're on console, don't stress. I got you. I'm just leaving the add-ons on so that you can see what everything looks like and you'll get the pop-up. So even if I'm talking about one mechanic and another mechanic goes off, you can kind of see what it looks like or what it would look like if you have the add-on. When you first come in here, you want to go ahead and get your group split up. So basically your off tank is going to be either to the left or right of group. It's arbitrary. It does not matter which direction you choose. You'll see here though that the boss is a very large cleave, so they need to be standing away from the group. You do want to be stacked up by the challenge banner because there is a mechanic that happens called Winter Storm, and it's best to be on the challenge banner. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But everybody stacks up on the challenge banner. The tank go ahead and stands to the left or right of group. Again, it's arbitrary which one you choose. And then the first thing you're going to notice, and what I would recommend, is have your group pause and look over at the main tank. Because when he gets light attacked by the boss, you're going to see these lines, these faint lines that pop up. And I have my brightnesses turned like all the way up, so maybe it's a little bit easier to see on my screen than it might be on yours. But that just gives you an idea of how big this wedge of cleave is. And so you want to know that for your group. It's not the end of the world if they get hit by a light attack. Some of the other attacks are worse, and obviously you don't just want to be standing in that area. And that is always the case throughout all mechanics in this trial. You don't want to be behind your main tank. You can dodge roll everything that happens to the main tank. So, if you are behind them, you can dodge roll as long as you do it at the right time, and you won't take any damage. But generally, just not a great idea to be right behind them. Now, shortly after you start the fight, first thing that's going to happen is going to be that there's going to be an ad that spawns in, this behemoth here. So it's cool. We get a sea behemoth instead of a fire and every other kind of behemoth there is. So he comes in. You just want to have your off tank taunt him. And what your off tank is going to do is just stack him right in front of the group. And everybody can just, slide back a little bit. The boss has a really big hitbox, so it shouldn't be a problem. And then ideally you would focus down the boss and cleave the ad. Now, if you start to get 2 ads up, or if it's been a long time, you do want to tell your group to go ahead and focus down the ad to get rid of it, get it out of there. And the reason for that is you don't want to be having your off tank having to hold the behemoth while you're doing other mechanics. And you also don't want multiple ads up because your off tank will die. And obviously that's probably going to cause a group wipe. The next thing that typically happens is something called Maelstrom. And what that is basically it's an AoE that affects everybody inside of the ring here. And so that just causes damage over time. Now it hits quite a few times a second. It's very rapid. And so it's something you really don't want to hold block through, especially as a tank, because it'll just drain your stamina super quickly. And you don't really need to. So it's just a heal check. You want to heal through it as best you can. If you're caught out of group and you're all isolated, hopefully you have a heal on. It does ramp up damage over time. So one of the things you can do is dodge roll periodically, and that will reset how much damage you're taking. If you keep your heal up on yourself, keep your hot up on yourself, and then dodge roll periodically as it's going off, you can actually survive this while out of group, although it is definitely a little sketchy. So it's best to just have everybody group up. Now, this mechanic will happen while you're having to be mobile in this fight, and you have kind of 2 choices. But again, just have everybody stack up. It's a heal check, not a big deal. If you have both healers up, you're going to be fine. If you are struggling with this, one of the healers is down. If it's one of the mobile parts of the fight, using a barrier during this phase is not a terrible idea at all. all and can definitely save you if you kind of have like an oh shit moment and you need to, try to keep everybody up. Definitely pop barrier and don't be afraid of that. It's a good idea. Now, another thing I forgot to actually mention about the main tank is that you will get heavy attacked by the boss. And the best thing to do here is dodge roll this. You can hold block through it, but it hits pretty hard. So I recommend just dodge rolling and you won't take any damage. You'll actually see the flares, the star flares on your character and not on the boss. And so even when you're in the mobile parts of the fight and you're not necessarily, hopefully you're side dashing the whole time, but maybe that's hard if you're on console. If you have a problem, whatever it is, you can see it on your character, even if you're not looking at the boss. And so you just want to dodge roll as soon as you start seeing those flares. The heavy attack, the times vary in different kinds of heavy attacks. This one is fairly rapid. So as soon as you start seeing the flares for a heavy attack as the main tank, you can go ahead and dodge roll and you should still be immune when the attack goes off and shouldn't be much of a problem. Now for the off tank, you are going to get heavy attacked by this behemoth as well. And what that does is it actually leaves a ground dot where you were standing. And so the DPS and the off tank need to move out of that. It will one shot you even if you're a tank, if you're standing inside of it when it goes off. Now the easiest thing to do is just to step out of it. You could also dodge roll through the ad and just turn it around like a 180. And that way everybody in the group is still getting cleave damage because they're attacking from a 90-degree angle. I'm sorry, not cleave damage. Is still getting backstabber on this guy because they're attacking from a 90-degree angle. And usually 2 heavy attacks is enough to get this guy down. You might get 3. Just realize as soon as he dies, all those AoEs are going to go down. The main thing is that you stack them all close to the boss as best you can. And that way there's still room for the group to move back and forth around the outside of the ring should the fight go mobile, that kind of thing. Not really too much else on the ad. The boss does do a few more mechanics. So one of the ones that affects everybody in the group here is called Crashing Wave. And that one you'll see equally spaced out around the circle. There'll be 3 sections that will highlight in red for you or whatever color your AoEs are, and they're pretty large. And that wave will knock you, it'll do damage to you, and then it'll knock you into the water if you're not blocking, and then you'll die to slaughterfish. If you get knocked into the water, it's usually death. So just realize that. If you're holding block, you won't get knocked back, but you will take some damage. I recommend as a DPS, or really as anybody, just go ahead and dodge rolling it. Honestly, as a tank, it's not that big of a deal. You can just hold block. It doesn't hit that hard, and you could save your stamina. You don't really need to dodge roll. Now, the one other thing that people often don't understand about this one is that if you look at the tank when this is happening, and I have it up on the screen here, you can see that there is like another AoE or outline of it left and right of the tank. What that is telling you is that there is always a 4th wave that is always centered on whoever has taunt on the boss or whoever the boss is aggroed on. So a lot of people are like, I got hit and I was outside of that AoE. Well, a lot of times they're standing inside of the main tank's AoE. So as a main tank, try to make sure that there's room for the DPS. Don't get too close to them, especially if you get bad RNG and they've got another wave that was already in the group and they had to move to your side. You might want to slide left a little bit for them or right. But again, it's the DPS's responsibility to just not be behind the tank. If you do get stuck behind them, again, if you dodge roll, you're not going to take any damage. And so it's not that big of a deal. Now, the next mechanic that's going to happen is probably the most tricky, and it's probably the one that's going to cause your group to wipe most often. And that is called Winter Storm. And this is actually the reason we stack on the challenge banner, is because Winter Storm always spawns near the challenge banner. And basically what it is it's 3 traveling AoEs that form a line across the donut that you're kind of DPSing the boss around, and it'll start moving around. Now, the reason that you want your tank not too far to the left or right of the group is because when this thing first forms, it doesn't actually start doing damage. And so you'll see here that I can move through it and won't take any damage. If you're too far to the left, or if you try to, and it's going that direction, or too far to the right and it's going that direction, it will hit you, it will do damage, and it will absolutely kill you if you're a tank. You can't dodge roll through it. You can try to move through it quickly and move towards it if you're too far out of position. But again, after a second or two, you really don't want to be anywhere near that thing. It will absolutely kill you. And so this is really hard because what it does is it travels around twice. And so if you're near the challenge banner and your tank is too, then it can kind of move past them. And then it can basically move a full rotation before it's forcing the group to move at all. And that way your group can just move one full rotation around, and it'll still chase you a second time. So it has to go twice around. But again, you won't have to go around twice yourself. Your group will just have to go around once. And then I will also note that this will stop before the challenge banner after it's gone around on its second loop. So again, if you're the off tank, if you're the main tank and you're near the challenge banner and it's coming towards you, just realize it will stop. If you want, cheat towards the DPS a little bit. You don't want to get hit by it because it will kill you pretty much instantly, or do enough damage that you'll die within a second or something like that. But if you're close to the challenge banner, it will go away, will dissipate before it gets to you. Now, the real challenging part of this mechanic is that a bunch of other mechanics happen while it's going on. So the entire group has to move clockwise or counterclockwise. I usually just call left and right because everybody's going to be facing towards the boss in the center, and that's a lot easier than thinking clockwise or counterclockwise for a lot of people. So just call left or right if you want to be easy. Now, one of the things that will happen is Maelstrom will happen while you're having to move around in a circle. You have two choices there. So the first is just to have everybody group up and then just to heal check through it. It's not a big deal. Now, if you have people down, people are spread out, people aren't grouping well first time, whatever, it's probably not a bad idea to just pop a barrier during that phase and then go ahead and have everybody stack up. Again, you're a full rotation in front of the whirlwind, so as long as you only do it as long as you have to, and then you get moving after that, you shouldn't have too much of a problem with this. And after a while, once you get some experience, if your healers are on point, they're pretty experienced, you can actually move while this is going on and kind of, healers either walking forward or walking backwards while combat praying the group and etc. You can also pop a barrier to help the group continue to move if something has gone wrong, you had to stop for reses, whatever, and the whirlwinds are catching up to you, you can just go ahead and keep moving if you pop a barrier, generally speaking. The group still wants to stay fairly close together, though, so that they can get hit by things like combat prayer and other group heals. Of course, radiating regeneration is a great thing to use during this and pretty much this entire fight because there are these really mobile portions of it. Now, as the group is running around, there's so many mechanics here, you will see Sirens periodically spawn around the outside. What I recommend when you're doing this part of the fight, because when you're stationary over by the challenge banner and one spawns opposite the boss, it's really hard to get over there because the Maelstrom can happen while people are out of group. All kinds of stuff can happen. The winter storm could happen and then they're way out of position, whatever. So if whenever the winter storm is happening, you see those Narids spawn, or Sirens, whatever you want to call them, if you just have everybody DPS them for a second, dot them up, they will die very quickly. And what those Narids do is they will mind control people. They'll take control of them. They'll turn them towards the very center, and then your character will start walking into the center, which will kill you if you go inside the center water area below the boss. And so you have like a second or two to break free, not a super long amount of time. So you can break free. However, it's draining stamina. If it happens to the off tank, they could be getting attacked by the ad. There's a lot of things that could cause problems. So it's just easiest and best to just kill them when you're going around the circle. If someone's on a full dot build, dot them up a bunch and then just move back to the main boss, and it's not a big deal. If everybody does it, they'll die super quickly. The problem happens when people don't focus properly and just ignore them entirely. So again, as you move around, Maelstrom could happen. The tank, you're still going to be being heavy attacked by the boss and light attack. So what I like to do, heavy attack comes up, keep dodge rolling left or right, whichever direction you're heading. That's not a big deal. If you're getting light attacked, you can kind of feather block a little bit. So block whenever you see the light attack coming, let it off. If you have lag, you might not be able to do that. But if you just hold block, you can walk around here and make it around fast enough that it's not too big of a deal, as long as you've got the CP that gives you a little bit of speed boost when blocking. Another thing for the tanks is you want to make sure that you're very high damage mitigation and that you've got as many self heals as you can. Don't be afraid to slot vigor on your back bar so that you constantly can have a hot up on yourself depending on your class and your spec. And then, other things that go along with that. Master Sword and Board is a great idea. The extra resistances, especially during Maelstrom, you can, because you want to be healing during that, not blocking, and that the resistances will help you take less from those damage over times, and you don't need to be blocking to get that. So that's a really good thing. You will have to be taunting quite a bit. You want to taunt like every 6 seconds in that case, but that works really great with Master Sword and Board. Also slot Flare. You could also slot Defensive Stance to help you when you are blocking, but just go with a very high mitigation bar when you're doing this fight, especially the first couple of times. Don't even be afraid to put on a couple of selfish sets if you think you might need it or could help the group, because if you're dying, everybody else is going to be dying. And when the mobile parts of the fight happen, it can be challenging at first. Once you get it down, it won't be a problem. I progged on this for quite a few hours, so just realize that. Yeah, anyways, that the group keeps moving left. Everybody's doing their thing. An ad could spawn during this time, or you could already have one up. What I would recommend to the off tank is just, you're going to be holding block and moving around. When the ad goes to heavy attack and you see that AoE start to form at your feet, what I would recommend in most situations is I would just take off running, because you can get like halfway around the circle by the time that heavy attack goes off, and that, as long as you keep taunt up on him, he's just going to come to you wherever you're at, and trying to move while he's attacking you and everything can be quite challenging and can be kind of annoying. So if he goes to heavy attack, you see the AoE start to form, I would just take off and get as far as you can around the circle and just have him come and catch up with you. Even if the group can't DPS him or cleave him down during that phase, that's the easiest way to deal with it. Once you get stacked up by the challenge banner, after you've gone around, you're going to be be good. The group will be able to take them down. It won't be a problem. And again, I know I've already said it several times, but you don't want to be behind the tank, especially during this phase. That's one thing I see happen. People will get ahead or will get in the tank's cleave, and that's just a bad idea. It's a recipe for dead DPS. If you do have one person go down, maybe two, I generally speaking would recommend not stopping for them and go ahead and making it a full rotation and then rezzing them as needed. Necro res can be great in this situation, especially because you can do it long range. Because if you have people move out of group to go res those people, Maelstrom could happen, and then you're going to be way out of group, and then those people are going to die, and you kind of get the idea. It's going to be a party wipe pretty soon once that starts happening. So ideally, everybody stays grouped up. If you do have to go out of group to res a few people, it's not a bad idea to send a healer with them, and that way the healer, if Maelstrom does happen, they can go ahead and pop it. And while you're first new at this, I would 100% recommend a self-heal on this fight. And the reason I say a self-heal because of another mechanic that happens, and that's called Deluge. And so with that one, what you'll see is kind of these little, I think they're supposed to be bubbles. So you get kind of this white cloud of bubbles around your chest area. And if you have the add-on, it'll put a big bubble above the other people in your group's head. I think this add-on is meant primarily for raid leads. Now, if you have it on yourself, a bubble will not pop up on your head. Just realize that, okay? That's just, it uses OD support icons, I believe, and putting an icon above your own head is not something you can do, or at least that it does. So just realize that you need to pay attention. Now, if you do have the add-on, you can see here, it gives you like 6 seconds whenever this mechanic is going to happen. So you have a ton of time before you need to actually get in the water. And so you can just watch the add-on and count it in, I wait till it's halfway done, and then I count in 3, 2, 1. Now with Deluge, what everybody needs to do is they need to get in the water. The 5 people that have it. And it will be 5 people every time. It'll never be the main tank. I don't think it's typically usually the off tank either, at least not if they have the add up. I could be wrong about that. I'm trying to think if it's ever happened to me, and I don't think it ever really has. So just keep that in mind. And all you got to do is step off into the water and far enough into the water that you're swimming. So a lot of people will say dodge roll, and I think the reason for that is if you dodge roll into the water and you're near it, it'll stop you once you get to the point where you're swimming. And so you could do that to kind of see, okay, this is how far I have to go into the water. Now, when you get into the water during the fight, there are, they say slaughterfish in the water. It will cause you to take damage over time. It's a bleed effect, so it continues even a little bit after you get out of the water. And so you don't want to enter too early because then you'll die from damage over time, from the bleed, from the slaughterfish, and you don't want to get in too late because then you'll blow up. What this does is each person that has the Deluge on them, it'll blow up and it'll do enough damage. 1 won't quite kill the group. It's kind of just depends on what other damage is going on. 2 will absolutely start killing the group. Any more than that, and it's going to be a wipe because the entire group is going to be dead. So just keep that in mind. Those 5 people, all they need to do is step into the water and then pop right back out. Now, if you're on console, if you're a raid lead, you need to count this in. If you have the timer up on your screen, I usually wait till it goes halfway down and then count in 3, 2, 1 very slowly. If you're on console and you don't have that, you'll see the visual pop up, and then you've got 6 seconds. So it's like the longest 6 seconds ever. Maybe it's like 8 seconds. I don't know. I don't imagine it's 7, but it's a slow 6 seconds is what it feels like. Maybe that's just being hyped up in the moment, but just count to yourself 6, 5, 4, and then you can start counting out loud 3, 2, 1, and then everybody gets in the water and they can kind of be moving back. The main thing is just to make sure you get in the water. If you get into the water too early as a DPS or a healer, the worst thing that happens is that you die to slaughterfish. If you get in the water too late, you might wipe the group. So just realize that. And this is another one of those situations, pop yourself heal. So you've got to heal over time. Vigor works. If you've got multiple people with echoing vigor, it is a huge self-heal. So if you've got 5, 6 people, even if they're mag-based, popping vigor before they hop in the water, it's going to help people even if they get in at the wrong time and stuff like that. And honestly, echoing vigor probably is OP here if you want to use it whenever you're kind of moving around, having it in the group, everybody using it constantly, you're going to get a lot of heal over time. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be something that's really going to help you. And then after that, that's all the mechanics for this fight pretty much. There are bridges, so I will go over that, but those are the main mechanics that you have to really get everybody on board, everybody doing to a over and over again, have them unlocked, and you'll be doing just fine. A couple of tips for different parts of this. When you're moving around in a circle and then you have Maelstrom happen, I assign my healers to call out if they want the group to stay, if they want the group to keep moving, or if they're not grouped up enough to yell at them to group up more. I just go ahead and offload that to the healers. They're the ones who are needing people to do one thing or the other to keep them alive. They're the ones that know if hey, it's okay if you keep moving, heals are fine, or if they were caught off guard, or if they had to single target the main tank because they missed a dodge roll or something else. So I just ask have my healers do it, and I would recommend that to you as well, but whatever you're comfortable with. Make sure you're dotting up the Narids as you move around the room, and that they die, and that you're just doing all these other mechanics. Don't get behind the tanks. Tanks should be very tanky. Healer should be very heal based. You don't want to be half parsing on this fight, at least not till you get it down. You want to have an altar out pretty much at all times, so everybody can pop that, especially while you're moving around. Altar has a huge radius, so as long as you could probably drop it once or twice while you move around, and that's going to help people if they're out of position or things go wrong, to help keep themselves alive. And then focus down those Narids whenever they pop up. Now, the last mechanic that comes into the fight here happens at 50%, 35%, and 20%. So what that is it's a bridge mechanic, and it's very much for the DPS. It's like the doing portals in Sunspire on the last boss on Navintas. So basically what you have to do, if you look around the arena, you'll see that there's 3 areas that are equally spaced out, and there's kind of like a ramp that goes up, and then it kind of goes up to an area that you can't really see from the main area. So what'll happen is a bridge will randomly form at one of those 3 locations, just a bunch of stones that go from the center area to the outside. And when that mechanic happens, what you need to do is have 2 or 3 DPS. Just realize if you send 3 people and you have the behemoths up while you've done that you probably want to single target the behemoths a little bit, so you don't end up getting 2, especially then if you have people dead. You just don't want 2 behemoths on your off tank. They're going to die. So just single target them if you do send 3 people up, and that is kind of a lower risk way of doing things. Also, you could send 2 and have a backup runner or 2 that could go up there and help them, and honestly you want to have that anyways, just in case your runners happen to die. Now, one thing that will happen is so the bridges pop up here, and then you kind of want to jump to the first one and jump to the last one, so you don't end up in the water and it slows you down and whatever. However, the one thing I noticed doing the bridges is that the Narids, and hopefully have some footage of this, but the Narids will pick your runners and they will do DPS to them even from like 150 meters away. Okay, they apparently have no limit on the range, and so if you just ignore all the Narids, you might notice that if you don't do something to aggro them on the group or on a tank, or some DPS doesn't DPS them in group, that they will just keep shooting your DPS that are trying to do your portal mechanic, and they will absolutely kill them and will overwhelm them even if they have a self-heal. So again, another reason why it's not a great idea to just ignore the Narids unless you can keep taunt on them or otherwise convince them not to attack those people. So just realize that if you're running up there and you see you're doing portals and you see these bolts coming in from nowhere and you're taking all this damage, that's probably what it is. It's probably the Narids. Now, once you run across the bridge, again, you want to have some sort of self-heal slotted, because you could be moving out of group when Maelstrom goes off or some other mechanic. And but anyways, you go up to the top, and then basically what I said about Sunspire portals, that's exactly it. So you have one ad that you have to DPS down, and then you'll notice there's a bunch of AoEs going off, so you just constantly need to be moving. And that's what I recommend. Just constantly kind of move around, kite around. If you get 3 people up there, it can get a little crowded, and you might want some people to be ranged, but with 2, it's not too bad. You need to DPS the ad up there down to 50% to complete that phase. If you get hit by one of the AoEs, it will slow you down and will probably lead to getting hit by more AoEs, and will probably lead to then you dying. So if you get hit by one, it's not the worst idea to just go ahead and call for backup if it's early enough in the process, because the chances of you dying once you get hit by one are pretty high, so it's a little unforgiving. Now, once you've DPS the ad down to 50%, it will go in a portal, and then a portal, you can use one as well. So you hit that portal, it'll port you back to the group, and then you just join the group and you keep DPSing. Now, for the off tank, whenever those ads, whenever that phase is done, the bridge is completed, that ad will spawn down in the main area, and you just want to taunt it and bring him into group, and then you'll see that there's an AoE, there's a halo around it. Those do a couple different things. One of them reduces max resources and regen. I think the other one does specifically health. And then another one will slow the group or anybody inside that AoE. So you want to keep that far enough away from the main tank so that they're not getting their resource recovery drained and they're not being slowed. But then everybody in the group, I would just have them, the safe thing to do is just focus it down. If you've got a bunch of DPS, you can cleave it down, but I just recommend focusing that ad as soon as it pops up, get it killed, get it out of the way, and then just go back to the boss. So again, 50%, 35, and then 20, that will happen. If you fail that bridge mechanic, it'll just wipe the group. So just keep that in mind. And I think you have 60 seconds or something like that to DPS the ad down. So again, just treat it like portals in Sunspire. If you have two very strong DPS that are very confident, you could probably just send two. If you have three people, or if nobody knows how to do it, or you're worried, go ahead and send three. Or you could even send four and let them get experience, and then those are going to be your backups later on, because probably you're not going to clear on the first try. So just keep that in mind, some things you can do to help yourself out and help your group out. And that is literally it for this fight, guys. Everything else is rinse and repeat. So hopefully this video was helpful. I will come out with a more in-depth guide for this and all the other fights, and we'll go over individual classes, all the different things, tips and tricks you can do for them. But that's it for today. And again, if you have any questions about anything, subscribe so you can see when those videos come out. But you can also drop in any of the live streams and ask questions there. I will absolutely, if it's a mechanic that I can answer, most of them I can. Feel free to just drop in the comments and I will answer as I am able. But anyways, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.